I am Manish Kumar Agarwal on behalf of Indian Society for Training and Development. Welcome you all. We are an organization of plus 50 years. We are working almost for more than 45 from 45 centers. We call it chapters. We have an international chapter also. We are the single domain for the last 50 years who is working into the training and development so professionally. We have the science of training, we have the technology of training, and at the same time, we contribute to the skills also. So we are a combination, comprehensive of it. We publish a journal, which is a research journal, every 3 months quarterly. We have a standard program, a diploma program for training and development of 18 months. That is also of its own kind into the industry. We have added with the credits also, so MBA people are also joining it now professionally. And to take it forward, to have the introduction of our prominent speakers and today's program, I request Dr. Gurmala Suriji, our chairperson, to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manishji, for telling a brief about the Indian Society for Training and Development. This is the platform we interact each other, we share our knowledge and try to discuss on the current issues and come up with some kind of a solution or deliberation. So today's topic was something like that. We thought of technology is important in the pandemic. So many things we have learned, relearned, and unlearned. So the discussion, two experts have volunteered. One of them is Jayashree and another is Shailendraji. To starting with Jayashree, her motto of life is entirely different as the other people have. Her LinkedIn page talks about inner comparison. Everyone is unique and you cannot compare two people. So you keep on learning and thinking on yourself, work on yourself so world can be beautiful. She's from Tamil Nadu. She's a coach as well as a researcher. I think that research word joins Shailendra and Jayashree together. This is my perception. And coming back to Shailendra, he is a versatile person, scholar, researcher, educator, and from ISB Hyderabad. Lot of research and papers and books, as usual, that is common for us in the teaching fraternity. He's a voracious reader. He reads, analyze, and discuss. So in today's platform, we have thought of taking forward the pandemic, the technology, and the learning. And this is what we are thinking. Everybody will contribute. The protocol we have set that if anybody has a question, they can raise the question in the chat box. Otherwise, Sachinji will take off the things with asking questions, and the people are responding, and we can also contribute in the same way. Over to Sachinji.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening to all of you. As we all are aware, today is Basant Panchami, and at the same time, we celebrate it as a Saraswati Puja. And those who are fond of Hindi literature, they also celebrate today day as a birthday of the famous poet Nirala. Surikant Tripathi Nirala was one of the uh, stalwart poets in Hindi literature. So it's multiple occasions, so to say, and uh, we recently had our budget passed as well, so that's another context. Um, in 2020, I guess we were talking about post-pandemic world, but it appears to me that we are in pandemic, and I don't know how long we are going to continue like this. When that post-pandemic would happen, because there are people who are saying that there will be another form of pandemic. COVID may get lost on the way, something else may crop up. So it's a lot of things happening today. And the moment you talk about Basant Panchami, it's basically new things around. The moment you talk about Saraswati, largely we are talking about learning. And if you look at learning, and before the formal initiation of the program, informally we have been discussing that actually pandemic has pushed us for a speedy and accelerated adoption of technology, and teachers, learners, trainers have been on the forefront of that adoption. So I think we can't talk about learning in today's context without talking about technology. Actually, technology has brought us together from different parts of the country. So before pandemic, as Shailendra was rightly pointing out, we had not thought that we would meet someday like this, and that too in such a near future. Recent budget talks about you know opening a virtual university. A lot of money is going to be pumped in for you know strengthening digital infrastructure and whatnot. So in this context, technology is going to be very crucial for the point of view of learning in coming days. It would be an understatement that it is important. It's going to be the very foundation on which learning can be seen. And particularly, if you look at bringing learning to masses, the moment you talk about scaling any intervention, you can't do it without technology. So, at least for that purpose, of course, technology adoption, like any other new things, have received its bouquets and brickbats at the same time. There are people who would say that technology is transformative. There are people who are saying that technology are exclusionary. So at one side, we are talking about technology, which is exclusionary because there is a lot of digital divide and stuff like that. At the same time, we are saying that it's a very transformative kind of a potential. So with this context, let me quickly introduce the panel. I would say the format which we have decided to follow is largely a chat show format. It's not going to be a presentation by the speaker. It would largely be a chat show kind of a thing. And I'll be posing few questions to invited speakers, Jayashree and Shailendra. Shailendra, just to add, has really worked for long before we were, at least for me, he was the one in my life, I would say, uh, who has been talking about technology long ago. I think last 15, 20 years, I think he has been talking about technology. And his earlier PhD work was on technology adoption. So I think he is one of the best persons we could have had. Jayashree basically comes from technology background because she engineering graduate in technology, moving to psychology and learning, and ultimately a doctoral work in learning and community interface. So I think our speakers have very right kind of experience and expertise. And before I actually start, I really welcome some very senior people have really joined us, like Gyaneshwarji. I can see. I could just see Colonel Lamba was here, and I guess that there must be some connectivity issue. So I welcome all and others. Dr. Jayesh, I can see Surajji, I can see Navneet, I guess one of my old students, and Kamal Palji and other colleagues. So it's not that I and Jayashree and Shailendra are talking amongst each other. The advantage of having a smaller group is actually everyone and anyone can participate at any point of time. But just to manage time well, I would just pose a few initial questions, and that would be basically triggers for the ensuing discussion. So, with this, I would pose the first question. See, our topic includes the phrase learning and development. And for us who are teachers, trainers, HR people, and professionals in this area of human development, the moment you talk about learning and development, it usually takes place through four interrelated and cyclical phases, so to say. We start with need analysis. Need analysis brings us to finalizing the objectives. Based on those objectives, we develop contents and methodology. And then we monitor the learning process, development process. We assess and we evaluate. And then again, we go back to the next, the loop. So, when you look at these four phases, what kind of opportunities do you see in contemporary context? Jayashree and Shalin. Any of you can start. Shalin, maybe you?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Sachin. I think, and thank you, Gurumalaji and Manishji for inviting me again for a different topic altogether. But it's and happy Basant Panchami to all those who are celebrating it. Coming back to the question that Sachin has posed, I think what technology, and he was talking about my own research and sort of consulting background in technology adoption. So my primary work has been in terms of looking from a user's perspective, not so much as a provider perspective, but looking at it from a user's perspective and how and where technology acceptance could be enhanced or could be furthered. Now, when you look at those four phases, I think there is tremendous scope of technology usage in the first and the last part, uh, simply because we would want to do that at a scale. One of the places where technology is of really great help, I mean, extraordinary help is scaling. When you want to accomplish, if it is something which is routine, if it is something which could be broken down into standard practices or standard steps, and you want to do it at scale, this is where technology could could play a very important role, and it could be the catalyst for a larger change as well. Now, when you look at need analysis and figuring out your, I would say, customers, clients, or trainees who are spread out in different geographies and different time zones, technology could be used to assess the training needs uh, at a scale. Similarly, when you come for feedback and when you come for assessment, also using technology. I mean, if you don't use technology, the kind of assessment tests that you have are fairly limited, very limited. Whereas if you start using technology, the assessment process and the assessment modes could be varied and they could be crafted for each of those target groups. So I would say the maximum use of technology that you could see, which is where in terms of providing access, in order to get access to a large population or large target group, both in terms of need assessment as well as assessment, is where technology could play a very important role.
Yeah. So basically, I guess you raised two important points, because usually the moment we talk about introducing technology in the process of learning, largely we focus on delivery aspect, the delivery of actual content. But the need analysis and evaluation, which could really be sped up and which could really be leveraged through technology, is one area where we actually need to work more. And that is how we are going to reach to this scale. So need analysis and evaluation, two neglected area which you rightly pointed out. Jayashree?
Good evening, everyone. So happy to be here. I think I completely agree. Like technology is a tool that can help us reach people that we may not have fathomed to have reached. In terms of like when there are constraints that are limiting us from heading out of our homes, there is so much potential in the technology. I think one thing that I would like to add as another perspective, another layer towards understanding technology is one, I will say what the benefit is. There is a need for agility. How quickly can we transition from this need analysis to providing content to assessing the learning, so that is not as long as it used to be. We need to upskill and reskill and learn almost on a daily basis. So bringing that agility, like, it can't be a paper pen based test and then it takes about 2 weeks to grade them and then 2 weeks to give the results, right? Like it can't be that long a process anymore. So there is a need for bringing a lot more agility. And in that perspective, I think technology has a great advantage to speed things up. However, I also want to emphasize what is the purpose of technology. If it is going to mimic what used to happen in a traditional classroom where there are lectures and then you record those lectures and then play it on a video, If it's going to be exact copy of what happened in a physical classroom, then that's not going to be of any use. So it is very, very important as educators, as trainers, as people who are working in the field of learning and development to really inquire into the purpose of what is the need for learning in these days, and in that regards, what is the benefit of technology? What is the more appropriate way of using technology? And technology as a word also, I think it's usually like just brushed under the carpet as digital technology. But we've been using technology since, we've had civilizations. So it's not nothing new. It's just about having those digital tools that have given a window into what can be the possibility, the advent of internet, and then the advancement that have come. I think it's very, very important that we are critical about asking the right questions as to why do we need technology, and for what reasons is it going to be implemented. Is it going to be just, like a blanket thing, generalized across, this is how we will do education? So I think there is one thing that is something that really, really bothers me is if can there be the philosophy of education thinking that can be added into how technology is being designed and how it is being introduced into the system of education. There is need for a lot more thinking and reflection in that space. And then while we talk about, how super useful technology is, we should also like keep this in mind.
Right. So basically, you raised, I guess, three very important and valid points. One is this whole idea of agility. Technology brings in agility, and the processes become agile. At the same time, you indirectly pointed out towards the whole idea of obsolescence of technology on a daily basis. So unless you are on your feet, technology pushes you to be on your feet actually, because you know that what you are using today, tomorrow it's going to be obsolete. Tomorrow it's going to be redundant. So you have to keep yourself on your toes, be on your toes, then only you can actually leverage it. The next important point which you rightly raised is using technology for the sake of using technology is again a uh, very, I would say, alarming situation, so to say, uh, because you rightly pointed out towards the purpose, and I could see Colonel Ram Lamba joined us. Welcome, sir. Uh, I could see you just now. So the whole idea of what's the purpose behind using technology, because as you rightly pointed out, if it is simply mimicking, that means we are mimicking the evils of traditional classrooms also. So that's another area. Are we just doing the same thing, but instead of doing it from a far off point, or we are actually adding value to it? So that's another important thing which you really pointed out pretty well. So
I just
again,
wanted to add a point there. I
please.
think Jayashree brought in very important perspective on uh, how do we see technology in this case. And I think one of we spoke about the haste or the speed at which we had to transform the entire training and teaching process and using digital technology. Now, as usual with all things which are done in haste, what we have done is we have not changed the mental modes.
Mm, mm,
What Jashi was pointing, we are not changed the way we want to look at a classroom. We're just trying to supplement it using WhatsApp, for example. So I would continue to be a instructor-driven training program manager, and that way I think I'm just skimming the use of technology. Then I mean I'm just it is inappropriate or a very suboptimal use of technology in that sense.
mm, mm,
Technology could be transformative, and one of the transformation that we've been looking for, I mean, I would say for the last 50, 70 years that uh, training and development as a separate field has come up, is to make it student or learner centric.
mm,
That has been a struggle for us. How do we make the entire T&D process to be user centric, the learner centric or the student centric in that sense? And I think what we need to now look at is technology can do that for us. technology can help us put the student or the learner right at the middle of the process rather than being at the periphery. Right now, the entire thing is being led by trainers. We are the center of the universe. We are the masters of the universe. I'm going to lead this. I'm going to teach you this. I'm going to train you on this. And that what we have just done now, and this has been a fallacy, and that's where I come from in terms of user-centric technologies, is that if you're replicating me in a classroom with my video in classroom, it is not doing anything. That's what Jayashree is pointing out. I mean, you're just skimming the use of technology and not turning it into a transformative experience.
Right.
What is available to us right now, and we have been forced to look at it, is to look at technology to be a transformative force. And the transformation, we are very clear what the transformation is. Transformation is to put the learner at the center of the process. The trainee to be at the center of the process and not as a peripheral. कक्षा में बच्चे बैठे हुए वो अपना पर्पस नहीं है. He should be the focus. She should be the focus.
So basically, I guess you really brought the whole discussion on the pedagogies which we are using actually. So largely we are using the similar pedagogies. So child centricity, learner centricity, that's missing. And that is what Jayashree was also pointing towards. She used the phrase tool for learning. But the point is the tool itself, the medium itself has become a message, which is very dangerous actually. So just using for the sake of using it. I was recently reading a report by World Bank, I guess, not recent, 1.5 years ago. And the overall conclusion of that report was basically they came up with 3 statements. And actually the entire report tried to justify those statements basically. So first statement was learners are not learning in school. This was the first conclusion. Students are failing, schools are failing children. Failing not in failing. Failing means they are not, performing their mandate. They are not. So learners are not learning. Schools are failing learners and systems are failing schools. So government and states and systems are not supporting schools the way they should have supported. Like in the recent budget also, barely, of course, if you compare it with the last year budget, there is 12% increase in education budget. But if you look at total, it's still 3%. Half of what national education policy envisages basically. So that's the danger. The good thing from our discussion is Jayashree and Shailendra, most of their lives have worked in South India. And there is this perception in North that South India is a bit better prepared or perhaps better equipped so far as the technology adoption and things are, similar things are concerned. So my next question would be based on your experiences, and Shailendra keeps on visiting North actually, and Shailendra basically comes from North. So he has basically one feet in North and another in South. So based on his experiences and Jayashree's experiences in South and in other countries as well, what would you recommend as, let's say, some best practices? Or, because so far from us, two key learnings have emerged so far. One is uh, technology or not technology. We have to adopt learner-centric approaches. So this is one. And technology still remains the tool, and the greatest tool still is the teacher. So and that tool needs to be sharpened. So these are the two key takeaways for us so far. And any thoughts on any best practices or any, I would say, salient example which you would want to share for us here?
So I can start by saying, it's one thing to say that, these are probably the platforms that we can look at. These are the kind of tools that we can, within the technology, we can look at. I think there are many examples where we can learn what the best practices are. But I think to highlight and sort of build further on where the conversation is leading towards, right? Like where we are trying to place a learner at the center of learning. So I think in terms of technology and in terms of trying to understand the need analysis, I think what can be put in the center is not getting or not getting married to the idea of having a standardized tool and having a categorization under which we want to label everybody. Want to have a standard gradation or a development pathway through which we want to ensure that the mass is like being educated, right? I think some of the best practices to bear in mind is, are we equipping the learner to make decisions about why they even want to learn, and is it and what is it that they want to learn, and is it okay for me to design my own learning pathway, right? And do I really need someone to put a stamp on me to say that I'm ready to work, particularly in the situation where we do not know what kind of work roles are needed in the future, or what kind of problems will emerge in the future. Like what you initially started off, Sachin, is that maybe we are there is never a post-pandemic situation. We are just going to be in pandemic, or it could be another form of another pandemic, not a COVID pandemic. So we don't even know. We cannot even predict what kind of influences can happen on our health, on our environment, on our financial stability. We have seen the craziness of how this pandemic has affected the economy, particularly of people who are in the lower economic strata, right? So I think that the best practice is really is to start looking at alternatives towards how are we viewing education, alternatives towards what does learning mean, alternatives towards is learning or is education the only maqsad of education is to get a job. And even if it is so, is it only going to be a doctor or engineer? You kind of like said about like south north, and the south is much better position to adopt technology, etc. I don't think we've gotten over the infatuation we have towards becoming a doctor or an engineer. For any person, if you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up, the first thing you still say is probably, the only specificity that has come is like, maybe I want to be a software engineer. Or even worse, there are people who say that this is the pay scale that I want to get. I don't care what job it is.
True.
So in a lot of ways, I think we are losing touch with why we are learning, what is the purpose of it, and how are we really contributing towards what we do as how we live in a society. So I know I am not really directly answering this question, but I intentionally not do that, because if you want to like Google, no, you can go to Google, ask Google, hey Google, tell me what are the best tools to use in a flipped classroom, and it's going to give you like some 100 suggestions. That's going to go over 5 pages long, right? You don't need someone like us to come and tell you what the best. But can we just like take all the things that we know about learning and development and put it aside and really ask the question, how has the learning so far served us, and can we now relook at what does learning mean for us now, and is it putting us in the path that we have led the society so far towards, where there is climate crisis, where there is unemployment. So no matter what kind of a technology you've been trained in, you still remain unemployed. Now what is the reason? And considering that there are so many young people who are in the age group who are ready to join the workforce development, what are some of the things that we are doing to not just finish a syllabus, right, but really give them the skills to navigate the world? Are those even, the questions that come to the table to have conversations, as opposed to saying that how do I now ensure that I can give a certificate that this person is graduated or not? Is that the important question? And a follow up to that is, how can technology help me do that? Or the question itself has to be reimagined. So the best practices, again, to reiterate my point in very succinct fashion, it is like, what are the alternatives in terms of our thinking, in terms of our beliefs, in terms of our priorities? So that's where I would stop.
Or in terms of a policy system of education.
True. So basically, you brought out a very important point of the basically looking at the purpose first and then take a path later, because we are choosing path in a very non-understandable way. We are choosing path largely because somebody else wants us to be on that path, or I believe that that's the right path because everybody else has suggested. So I think basically you are asking the fundamental question: why are we choosing the path which we need to choose? For example, why are we adopting technology? You know, why we are learning in the first place, and then perhaps learning comes first and technology is just a tool, as we have been talking about. And you talked about alternatives, alternative thinkings, alternative paradigms of decision making, so to say. Shailendra?
I think we did look at a breakup earlier in terms of the stages in learning and development. But we could also look at this question from a stakeholder perspective and say, let's say, a stakeholder or different components of the ecosystem, learning and development ecosystem. So when you look at it, you would have four parts to it. So you would have, of course, the trainer, you would have the learner, you would have the process, and the purpose, and that she was talking about. When I say purpose, it could also be manifested through content. What is the content? Now, so the four parts that I would look at when I look at the entire learning and development ecosystem is learner, trainer, content, and processes. Now, for each for all four of them, technology could play an important role. And I see a lot of questions. I think Jayashree was responding to those questions as well. Now, when you look at it from a trainer perspective, what can technology do for trainer? Now, the like I said, the transformative nature of technology for trainer is to enable a trainer to do more than she would be able to do as a physical person. Now, one of the biggest advantage I would say, and I was talking to, we were speaking about it, and Dr. Gulamala also alluded to it, is that as a trainer, now I am free to bring bigger and better experts onto my session. And that is a transformation that technology can bring in. So when I go to a training session, I don't have to just depend on me and my interpretation of what great training practices or content has been in that sense. I could bring in the best of the brains onto my session without it being too terribly expensive. So Sachin and I have been fortunate that we have had Dr. Uday Parekh come and train us on basics of learning and development. That is not something which is available to everybody. We were just fortunate to get it in that sense. But now, because of technology, what you could bring in as a trainer, I would say, you could leverage on your network and make sure that you are enabled, you have more power. And similarly, now from a user perspective, from a trainee perspective, earlier the trainee also had a very limited scope or a limited access to knowledge or limited access to material or limited access to trainers in that sense. I teach a course on platform business at IBS Hyderabad where I teach, and I've been talking about a lot of learning and development platforms which make the entire world accessible to you. As a learner, I don't have to just depend on the nearest learning and development professional. The entire world is available. I don't even have to go to a platform. I could simply go to YouTube. And YouTube, I would say, is the world's largest classroom in that sense, that you could get the best of the world sitting there. And that is what I would call to be a transformative experience for learners as well. The other thing that technology brings in, and I'm using a jargon for that, we call it time shift. Time shift. Or also, in other words, what we call as asynchronous. The entire learning and development for us has been where the faculty, where the trainer and the student are there in one time. They have to be synchronous with each other. What technology has enabled, and that is the biggest thing which has happened, is that they have made the entire training and development, it can make entire training and development to be asynchronous. That we don't have to be at the same time and same place. And that simply opens up the scale. And Sachin and I have discussed that in different contexts altogether. We said, if we are in service delivery, if I have to sit and do counseling for every student, I only have 24 hours in a day. And that student has to be available at that moment to take that counseling. What if you could do a asynchronous time shifting where I don't have to give all my 24 hours for this kind of thing, and we could make it using technology. We could make sure that that counseling is available to hundreds and thousands of students at the same go. I think that is the transformative nature of technology, which we have to look at. That it has to be time shifted or made asynchronous. Of course, there would be part of processes, and that's where I was talking about processes. Certain processes have to be synchronous, that they have to happen in real time with the trainer material, trainer content, and the student. But a lot of that could be made asynchronous. Similarly, content also. We have been thinking that all the content has to be delivered in the session, that it has to be synchronous. We should let go of that. We are not the repository of knowledge. It is not that only when I am standing as a trainer that I can give that ज्ञान as a faculty मैं ज्ञान बरसाऊंगा and बच्चे उसमें बारिश में भीगेंगे. Man, that barish can happen anytime, anywhere. You have to make it asynchronous. It is only that insight part which is only possible, like 10 of us or 20 of us meeting. It is only the insight part which has to be synchronous. If it is reading, if it is assimilating knowledge and stuff like that, all that could be made asynchronous. Again, the content part as well. So all three, what we are looking at, I'm saying, when you look at what are the platforms, you have to start looking at platforms, you have to start looking at technology which can help us to time shift, which can help us to make it asynchronous. Because that is the only way to go to scale. And I keep saying this, for a country like ours, unless we do it at scale, we are not making any impact. And millions of people who require specific skills, they need to be upgraded on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, annual basis. They have to get new skills. If we go back to the same synchronous model of training and development, we would not be able to serve. We do not have that many trainers. We don't have that many classrooms. We don't have that many facilities to make sure that we are able to reach out to millions of people who require training. We have to make it asynchronous. And that is where I'm saying technology can help all the four parts: content, trainer, student, and the processes to be made mostly asynchronous, with the main insightful parts being synchronous.
Yeah, so I think if we merge whatever we have been discussing so far, we can actually think of a matrix, I would say, as Shailendra has just pointed out. Because in the beginning, I talked about 4 phases of learning and development. So on the column, I would say that there could be need analysis, determination of objectives, determination of content methodology, and evaluation. And on another axis, I would say would be at all these 4 phases, what are the imperatives for trainees, what are the imperatives for trainers, and what are the imperatives from the processes side, and what are the imperatives of the content at the all 4 stages. So we can really think it through and actually fill those boxes actually to come up with very specific suggestions. So now we talked about transformative nature of technology. But at the same time, we have been talking about exclusionary nature of technology, because a large chunk of people are facing the problem of affordability and access and related issues. So if you look at challenges so far, we talked about opportunities, we talked about the potentials, but what challenges do you foresee, and how we can sail through those challenges? Before I come to the final session, we need to conclude our discussion and open the floor in another 2 minutes. So, yeah.
I 2 minutes is too less for even just me to list down the challenges, but sure. I think one of the things that's very straightforward is the accessibility, right? What we say here, and let me not go into something that we all probably know already, right? But one thing that is something that as I was listening to this conversation occurred to me is that yes, there is 2 sides to the coin, right? Like now, who is becoming the content creator? I don't think it is the educator only who's creating content anymore. The content is available, and anybody who has access to a smartphone or a device that can, record content are becoming the content creators. Now there is pros and cons towards both. One is like spreading of the fake information around, and creating a lot of movements that are baseless, and a lot of bullying that can happen because of these kind of content. But at the same time, it brings in a lot of voices that have been unheard before, where there has been a very singularity or a monopoly of who is providing the content or whose content is being propagated. Now there is a multiplicity of who's creating content. The other thing is about access is not just in terms of the devices, which we all know very well. It's also about the connectivity, but it is also about language. It is also about the contexts that are getting missed, and it is also there is a lot of assimilative exercises that are happening. So while we are trying to put a device in a learner's hand in wherever nook and corner they are we trying to encourage the kind of context that they are part of, the culture that they are part of, or are we converting them into something else? Because that has been happening in education. It is not new, but the pace at which it is possible now is frightening. Right now, you do research only from a Western perspective. You have to do your quant, you have to do your qualitative, and who is deciding all that? It's all Western rubrics. You don't meet up to that standard, then your research is not valid, right? You are a mother and you are like watching your child grow, and then you are gathering data on a daily basis. Now that doesn't sell. No employer is going to come and talk to you to get information, right? Like they only look at a certificate that has been assimilated. It is not entirely wrong. We are trying to have the intentions are in right places, but then are we able to value that uniqueness? So when we say that learner is at the center of it, what does it really mean? Is it about them having their own pace of learning and going through it, or is it about allowing them to bring their entire selves to the learning process and enabling things that are meaningful for that geography, right? If I live in a village, if I live in a small town, then am I using this learning and development practices to bring fertility to my town, or am I being forced to migrate to a better city and then live this consumeristic lifestyle and then just become another bot, as it were, that I am like a 2022 citizen or 25 citizen, right? So I think the challenge, and my challenges are very, very abstract. I think these are, but at the same time, they are very, very important and critical foundational questions that we have to sit with to understand the challenges. So it is not just about am I able to use a Google form or not, or am I able to create a Google form that is in Tamil versus in English, right? It's much, much deeper beyond that layer of obstacles. However, that also is something that is very, very inaccessible in that sense. Like these tools are not programmed by people who are from our towns and villages and cities, so they don't understand the psyche of people. The app is being created by people who live in this corner in a one room and siloed into this laptop, and that is the world that they know, which they know very well, but they don't know me in my small town in a corner of my country, right? I'll stop.
Yeah, so basically, two very vital points. One, the good sign, I would say, which you have pointed out, that the technology has kind of democratized the learning space in terms of content creation. Let's say anybody can bring in their content. So that way, the space has got democratized. But at the same time, the quality content is very difficult to actually get to the quality content because of the multiplicity of it. And so that's one challenge, the kind of content which is being delivered. And second angle which you really brought out, and that's my area of interest as well, this whole idea of the context and culture, the context in which something is being created and the context in which that creation is being consumed. So there is a clear disconnect. So that's another core challenge which you have rightly pointed out. Shailin?
I have this sort of obsession. Once I get stuck to an idea, so for example, the entire process, I've been thinking about this session for about 2-3 days now, and I'm still focused on the transformation part of it and what can go wrong, how it can go wrong, and which will not lead to the end result, which is the transformation of learning and development, which can happen. Now, this is where we started off right in the beginning, and even before the other guests joined in, we were talking about it. We could pitch it at a very low level. Now, what is going to happen is when we look at technology and transformation of learning and development, we could pitch it, and we could be happy with a situation where we're only looking at, and again, it's a management jargon, we're only looking at operational efficiencies, and we're using technology for operational efficiency. Let me give you an example. For example, one of the ways that it has lessened the burden is in terms of assessment. Instead of having a pen and paper test, which is going to take, let's say, 2 weeks to evaluate and stuff like that, you could do the entire assessment on a Google form, and Google is going to generate the result. That's a wonderful use of technology. That's a wonderful use of technology in assessment phase. You could also have written answers and use AI to come to a conclusion, and it can also evaluate that also. So it just lessens the burden on the teacher, on the trainer. But what is happening there is, instead of a teacher who would have evaluated, let's say, 100 scripts in a day, now the same person can evaluate 100 scripts in 30 minutes. So what has happened is technology has helped us to improve the operational efficiencies, and which is a wonderful thing. But my worry is that this is where we are stopping. We are not leveraging on the true power of technology. We are happy in most of the places, and this is the happiest of places. These are the best of places where we have content ourselves with just operational efficiencies.
True, true.
The power lies much ahead. The power lies, and again, this is the kind of work that we have been trying to do in the center that I'm leading now, where you could have advanced operational efficiencies also. And for example, I come from, I'm a runner, I'm a long distance runner, and one of the things that we have been experimenting with is training, long distance training. No, people have to be trained. That is again training and development only. Now, what I could do is I could ask these guys to send me their daily running data. What distance did you run? How much did it take? What was your pace? And all that data I can collect. What I could do now is to use the data which is generated by the users to have a better training program. This is the next step in using technology as a transformative tool. How can you improve the overall process itself, not just the outcome for one student? How can you use the data, the assessment data from students, which makes your life easier because it is all digital, but take it a notch higher, it's a notch or two higher, and use that to derive even better training programs. My problem has been that as digital transformation people or training and development, we have been just content. Even at the best of places, we have been just content with increasing the operational efficiencies only. We are not leveraging technology which can transform both in terms of learning opportunities as well as growing the sector itself. So, covering that loop, could you use the assessment data to determine new training needs? As of now, we are not using technology for that. That could become the next level of use of technology to transform learning and development, where you could use the assessment. And this is technically what we would do in a small setting. No? You look at the assessment and figure out, oh, this is what this person lacks. Let me create another training program. But right now, we are not using technology for that. We are content with only operational efficiencies. This is provided what Jayashree has already covered, that there is still a problem of access. There is still a problem of affordability. So I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just talking about use of technology and what are the lacunas that we have. We are sort of content at a very low level, I would say, even at best of places, where we're only looking at the operational efficiencies. How can I reduce the drudgery of teacher? Instead of evaluating 100 scripts, can it be converted into MCQ and evaluated? Of course, the question itself, can it be captured through MCQ itself is a question mark.
It's a questionable question.
It is a questionable question, but even when I'm doing I'm just reducing the drudgery, which is a good goal to have. But we shouldn't be content with that.
Yeah, so the core challenge, as you rightly pointed out, is this whole idea of mechanization of the process and being satisfied just at the operational efficiency level, not leveraging the true power of it. I guess we have just 5 minutes and it's too less, I know, but floor is open now. Any questions and comments before I hand over again back to both the panelists for 30 seconds for their parting comments, 30 seconds each at the end. But then before I invite for the parting comments, any questions and comments or anything? Any question, any comment? Ji Gyaneshwar ji, please.
Whatever I make out of it, that is the cultural part is by our evolution, ever since we evolved. So cultural part is very much needed. We feel like gossiping, we feel like talking, we feel like going to a village fair. So that is our evolution. So that will continue, and that has to continue until we as humans we are living, not machines. But the influx of entering of the technology is indispensable. So that has to enter and that has to update, and it is updating every day at an accelerated pace. So both are very much to be maintained. That is as Jashri pointed at the end. So that was this only about this I am talking about. And moreover, other technical things are keeping a check and all that. That is also getting updated, like fraud or something befooling others on the this technical platforms. So that can at present the technology is ushering into new domains like blockchain technology and all that, and that is also a very good tool to keep a check of vigilance as well. But the right kind of living and moreover maintaining the uniqueness of every person, every the goal, if we ask, according to me, is just the inquisitiveness to be maintained, which is up to ninth or 10th class children maintain naturally. After that it dies out here in our environment, and that is in some countries they have caught it. Here we don't find any many people going to libraries. Libraries are also not good in small cities like where I am living, Dharamshala. And these things are decaying people, and people though culturally they are believing in so many other aspects, that is cultural religious related aspects as well, but they have to be rationally checked, and otherwise people will go into the wrong directions and rather decaying directions. So technology can bring the freshness, accessibility as well, and maintaining of culture is definitely important until we reach those stages where we don't feel like having any culture. That I don't know whether this will come or not, but presently we have to be open to everything. We have to open to everything and save those like small children going into the wrong directions. That check can be done. But in brief, I have this
Thank you.
one.
So
Because time
basically,
will not permit.
you pointed out towards the danger of homogenization of culture. It's not that we are going to in a phase where we won't be having any culture. Actually, the homogenized kind of a culture, mechanical kind of culture, is what we are, envisaging as a negative fallout of this technological transformation process. Point well taken. Any other comments or question? Yes, Colonel Rama.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good
It was
evening.
very enriching experience to be part of the Vicharshala, and I have a small suggestion to make that the trainer and this great speaker today, they very well brought out every aspect of it. But should it reach to the students, So if you in Vicharshala, if we can involve 2-3 students and have a dialogue kind of approach, probably it will be received much more, sir. Second is, the leveraging technology is well understood by all of us. What is its application? And down to the between trainer and trainee, the major casualties, what I have experienced last 30, 40 years of my teaching and learning as well, is that the receptivity and retentivity are the two major hindrances. So that is the request. So if that could be well taken, and it was wonderful experience, something very special to be part of you. I came after quite a long time, and Dr. Gunwala has been saying I'm not appearing on the scene. So I thought of thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. You really, we have invited quite a few students, and I guess some of them have actually joined us. But I guess they have not yet participated. So I will urge students to come up with their questions. But your point is again well taken. For the next session, perhaps we can have a student panelist formally involved, and perhaps that would bring out other aspects as well. And the other point which you rightly pointed out is pertaining to, I guess, some echo is happening.
Actually, one point I just say, students,
Uh,
the,
uh,
as we see in the recent
Lamba sir, can you mute
Sir.
yourself?
problem in the
Sir, last point I said was that the receptivity and retentivity
Retentivity
by
is the
the
great
audience,
casualty.
because the trainer wants to bounce with all possible knowledge
Yeah,
available to him
yeah.
with the latest
True,
technological
true.
assets or strength he has.
Sure.
So what has happened is that a student body or the audience are variables. Each one is different individually, sir. So to know their psyche, to rapport relation we formed earlier, we used to do 40 years back. Today it is much different, sir. So
Right.
until unless that, sir, श्रद्धा से शक्ति,
Right.
श्रद्धा होगी तो रिसेप्टिविटी बढ़ेगी सर, अटेंशन ज्यादा होगी और
Definitely.
रिसेप्टिविटी बढ़ेगी तो रिटेंटिविटी बढ़ेगी. तो देर इज ए टेक अवे फैक्टर सर. आजकल जो चल रहा है इसमें टेक अवे बहुत थोड़ा है सर. बच्चों को इंटरेस्ट ही नहीं है, वो क्लास से उठकर चले जाते हैं. तो आपका टेस्ट है हाउ लॉन्ग यू कैन रिटेन देम इन द क्लासरूम सर,
True,
or
true.
detain them, whatever you can say. Forcibly you detain them, otherwise they are there. So this is a challenge trainer has, sir, today to face.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, can you mute yourself now, sir? Because there is a lot of echo
sir.
and background noise. Can you mute yourself? Thank you, sir. One more question or comment we can take before I finally hand it over to Malam. Anyone? Any other question, please?
actually on the technical aspect, the student can be involved from the university level. I believe who can maturely participate if he is a serious student, because in the whole of the world, like graduate students of Europe or something, they have contributed wonderful things in the especially scientific fields like insulin development. You see their intent, their what they wanted to do. So otherwise plus two students very carefully to be selected, because they are more career oriented locally, like in India.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Now, just given the fact that we have already overshot by 4 minutes, I would request Shailendra and Jayashree to come up with their final comments, and then I'll hand it over to Gudmala ma'am. Any final comments from you, Shailendra?
Uh, I think we have discussed a lot of stuff here. I just want to emphasize in different words, and I've used that in different one of my newsletters that I write. Keep talking about it. That technology in learning and development could be that escape velocity. I keep talking about escape velocity. This could be the escape velocity which can put the entire sector in a different orbit altogether. We are moving at a very low orbit right now. But if we leverage on technology, we could transform ourselves and and move into a higher orbit, and thereby we can help both the trainers as well as the learners. And that has been the goal for us. How do we enable trainers, and how do we make sure that learners are lifelong learners as well? So technology could be that transformative force that we have been lacking for so far.
Thank you, Shalin. Jayashree?
I think just to help us get to that escape velocity and move to a different orbit, I would just add having a more ethical and philosophical discourse around the leveraging of technology for education. If we can add another layer of that as the advancement of technology proceeds, and because technology has become such an integral medium of instruction for education, which has not been the case for so many in technology as in digital technology, can trainers and in societies or associations like ISTD also invest a lot of energy and effort towards building that up? What are the ethical and the philosophical aspects of integrating technology or leveraging technology for training and development? If we can have that discourse, very critical discourse at that, then I think truly technology can be a transformative force. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Shalin. Thank you, Jayashree, and thank you everyone else who could spare time. And I will conclude with what Jayashree and Shalin have just pointed out. Ultimately, as teachers, as trainers, as facilitator, we need to redefine the questions first, I guess, and then perhaps we need to keep on skilling ourselves, because today is the auspicious day where the spring season starts. Basant Panchami hai. और बसंत वाले दिन ना बहुत बचपन में I have read an essay by Hazari Prasad Dwivedi, who was one of the very prominent writer in Hindi, जिन्होंने कहीं लिखा था कि बसंत आता नहीं लाया जाता. तो ये जो आइडिया है, एज टीचर एज ट्रेनर वी आर ऑल इनटू लर्निंग बिजनेस, तो ये जो सीखने का बसंत है वो हमको लाना ही पड़ेगा. पैंडेमिक ने हमको धक्का देकर उस बसंत में ढकेला जहां हम रोज नई चीजें सीख रहे थे. रोज पहले हमको ये नहीं आता था, अब ये आने लगा है, अब ये और सीखना है. तो एक तरह से आप देखें तो पैंडेमिक का जो अच्छी चीज हुई है कि पैंडेमिक इटसेल्फ इज एन ऑटम, एक्चुअली पतझड़ था, उसने हमको सीखने के वसंत में धकेल दिया है. और यदि हम उस वसंत को नहीं सीखते हैं, उस वसंत का फायदा नहीं उठाते हैं, तो हमारी जर्नी का भी बस अंत ही हो जाएगा. बसंत में फिर और कुछ बचेगा नहीं. तो हम सबके जीवन का बसंत जीवन भर बना रहे. विद दिस बेस्ट विशेस आई विल हैंड इट ओवर टू गुणमाला.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Jayashree, Shailendra, and summing up, Sachinji. Almost all the things you have mentioned in a beautiful way. Everyone has to sail. I'll just conclude by only one line. We have to learn, relearn, and unlearn to get the desired result. So that is the objective of everyone's life. And keep on thinking, keep on doing new things, keep on leaving the old things which are not relevant. And that keeps us moving. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Manishji, for introducing us. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Gunmala.